on the beat.
Welcome back to the Supercoach Take podcast. It is around the buys are over, which is great. Some people did okay, some others not so great, such as myself. But for today's episode, so Eno's been fired due to demand or due to peer pressure. Anyway, he actually has tonsillitis. But joining me, it's just me and Jackson Davey. JD, how you going? And how did you go this week?
I promoted up into the second seat. See you later, Eno. That's what you get for being too popular with the fairer sex, I must say. So, you brought that upon yourself. If you just focus a little bit more on Supercoach, you'd be ranked higher and your tonsils would be clean. But instead, it's just me and George holding down the fort this week. I'm doing okay. I'm very happy the buys are over. Getting that full team on, it was always a great feeling. And now we're on the home stretch for the 2021 season. So, time to finish out strong.
What did you score this week, and how did you find the buys overall anyway?
I scored a 1652, which took me to 815 overall, 815. So I moved up about 500 ranks during the buys, which was okay, but probably down on prior years. I think in the end, like my quick reflection would be I underestimated the buys this year. The moving of the game, the Tigers buy to that last round and then only giving the 2 extra trades just really wasn't sufficient to fix teams last minute. So it felt a lot harder than it did in prior years. And I was actually pretty confident coming into the buy. So it's good to move up 500 points, but overall I was still pretty disappointed with my performance during them. What about yourself, George?
You didn't have to ask that, but...
Sorry. Could you want to start with your rank or your score for the week? Because I think they're about the same, aren't they?
I think Eno's going to overtake me soon. I scored 1323. When I didn't trade well. I didn't in my position. I absolutely had to hold Impey and hope he came good. But I just feared if he hadn't put another 70, he had a 4-week average of 70. Then I would be stuck trading him to a bad premium. But that's okay. I just inability to hold my nerve this year. But yeah, scored. It won 1323. Had to double check that, and then rank 1.4k. So look, it's not like a disaster rank, but given my team position, given people brought in Neale such as yourself, it's just another one that I don't have that is just gonna make me pay really hard. So I think I was just ill prepared for the buy rounds, and I used my extra trades on focusing on my final team rather than covering donuts. In hindsight, we'll see what the better play was, but I think I should have played it for an extra 200 points in the buy round rather than look after the team. But learn for next year and move on and take the credibility hit that I will never recover from. So when is it okay to finish a team? Because last year, and I think actually last year has thrown me off in terms of strategy, because last year it was there's only 17 rounds. We've gotten extra trades. Who cares? Just trade your ass off. And then I sort of forgot how to play this year and what made me do well in the 2 previous years. But yeah, in the previous years, I finished my team usually a week or 2 after the buy. I do see most people seem to finish after, during the buy rounds. This year wasn't to be. There's been so many expensive mids to bring in, so it's a little bit harder. So for me, I am going to finish a team, I believe, in 2 weeks. I need to wait for plays to make money, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to field CCJ for another 2 weeks and finish hopefully in round 16, at the end of 16. So I think it's okay. I think 2 rookies on the field, probably not great. 1 rookie I think is okay, and then if you finish the team, fantastic. You're probably going to go up in the ranks. How about yourself? Are you going to finish a team this week? Next few weeks, are you waiting for rookies? What's the go?
Yeah, so I just have 1 premium left, which is Dangerfield, who I want in F6, and I'll be aiming to get him in after this week. So that'll be the final team, which I think will be probably, I feel like it's going to be about average. I have seen some teams that'll be done this week, which is pretty crazy to me. They've done really well to finish a team already. But I think a lot of teams will be finishing in the next week or 2. And if you're playing for overall, then I think that's what you should be aiming for. Just because you're going to start leaking points to those full teams. I mean, you would expect the difference between a good premium and a rookie to be about 50, 60 points a week. So if you have to finish your team 2 weeks before everyone else, that's 100 points. That's really quite bad. So, yeah, I think you should be aiming for next week or two at the latest. And George, let's be real here. The reason why you've struggled to manage trades is because you've been dabbling in the dark arts. You've been dabbling in a little bit of fantasy, haven't you?
Yeah, I thought about changing my name to George AFL Fantasy. Okay, I guess people don't want to hear about that, but yeah, I'm pretty much focused on that now. So I'm so much to the point that I'm probably going to do an AFL Fantasy video this week. But I think again, I don't think people want to hear about fantasy on Supercoach. But I think the best thing about fantasy was when Supercoach went downhill this week, I could look at fantasy, so I had something to look forward to in the fantasy realm. So maybe it's karma for going to the dark side. Who knows? But yeah.
Can I just say, George, there's one thing I do love about you is that, for most people, 1.4k rank with a good team on the run home, still top 1k in their sights, a 3-digit finish like that. Most people are really happy with that. And honestly, you've been acting all week like it's the end of the world. So I love that competitiveness. I love that, a 1k finish isn't good enough. It's, yeah, that's great. So I must commend you on that.
That's the first nice thing you've said to me all week after this weekend. But thank you, JD. You and the rest of the Discord have been flaming me.
Yeah, well, there's still more to come. Don't worry.
I deserved it though. But for someone who has a YouTube channel, yeah, thanks for that. For someone who has a reasonable standing in the game and all the preseason hours, to see it wiped away in a week was a little painful. But as long as it doesn't blow out too much, and hopefully by some miracle, if Guthrie can fix his shoulder issues and maybe we can make our way up. Oh, by the way, I might be down Josh Kelly. Probably deserved that injury as well, but that's another story. But yeah, thanks for those kind words. Always trying to aim high at Supercoach Take. That's in our introduction in our Discord. One of our core values is competitiveness. So we like to do well, and that's very important to us.
So just to finish out the conversation we're having with finishing this team here, how many trades are you aiming to have at the end of that? I know we've kind of touched on this a couple of times the last few weeks, but let's just circle the wagons one more time before we move on.
I think you said the other day a good rule of thumb is one injury trade every 3 weeks. So I guess the answer is 3. Again, it just really depends. You could get 2-3 injuries in the same week. You could get none for 5 weeks. It's who knows. I think 3 is a good answer. I think 2 with good rookie cover, like you can say Highmore and Highmore down back. CCJ in the forward line, maybe like an Edwards or maybe Newcomb. I thought he was going to be our cover. He's going to play this week, but not sure. But good rookie cover. 2 trades, otherwise 3. 4 is great. I think 3 is what you want. 1 is deep trouble, and 0 is pray. That's all you can do really. But I think the answer I think you should be comfortable with or okay with is 3. But I have 2. So what about you?
Yep. I think I'm going to go to 2 as well, just to make sure I can get Dangerfield a week early. But it also means that I'm going to have really good bench cover. So I'll have like Bianco for defense and midfield. I'll have Coleman Jones for forward and ruck. So I'll have a couple. Maybe I'll have Edwards in the midfield as well. So 2 trades plus cash in the bank, which is actually pretty handy as well, because one of the things that can happen is when you get a player that's injured, so you get like a Ridley injured, if you don't have cash in the bank, well, you still got to use 2 trades anyway if you want to get him up to someone good. Or otherwise, you're just sideways him to someone that's quite poor, that won't necessarily score well. So, if I end up with 2 and cash in the bank, I'm not going to be too disappointed, as long as the rookie cover's good. But I'd much rather have 3, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's still 9 rounds to go, but I say... kind of clutching straws here, but I say there's 8 rounds because in the last round, if you get an injury in that round, it doesn't matter. So technically, I guess you can say it's 8 rounds to go. It makes it sound a little bit better, but yeah, 3, awesome if you have that. Now we'll get into today's discussion topics in terms of players, and there's a few players, a few minor injuries, a few players that have had a slight shift in role. I think the big one is guess who's back again. Neale. You brought him in, got rewarded pretty hard. I picked Josh Kelly over Neale, and that did not go well. But uh, yes, Lockie Neale. So I think the question is, do you bring him in? Absolutely, you do if you can. I have a full midfield, unfortunately. But what lengths do you go? Like, if you have an underperforming mid and you want to use one of your injury trades, say, like I'm not going to do it, but I've toyed with the idea of if Guthrie goes really bad this week, has another 5 contested possessions, and refuses to fall down on his shoulder like he did on the weekend, I would love to make the switch. I think that's really dumb though, because my rank might tank with 1 injury trade left. So is he like the number 1 target? Like, is he above Bont at the moment? Like, how do you rate Lockie Neale, and like what lengths? Like, would you sideways someone for him if it meant going down from 3 to 2 trades, for example? How do you feel about Lockie Neale?
He's by far the best value midfielder at the moment. So, I think it's probably reasonable to expect that Bont scores better than Neale from here on out. But for the 120k difference in price or whatever, you just have to back in Lockie Neale, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's tough because there's so many good midfielders this year, right? No one midfield's going to have everyone. No one midfield's going to have Bont, McRae, Oliver, Lyon, Steele, Parrish, and Neale, which I think is the top 8. I might have just listed 7 and be missing one. But yeah,
Missing
I think
Kelly.
I'm probably well, like it could be Took Miller, it could be Kelly. Titch looks all right. It could be Walsh. It could be Merritt.
I think it's actually Took.
So yeah, but so no midfield's going to have all of these. But if you're in a position where you have the spare trades, which is pretty rare, and you've got someone like Brayshaw M8 or you've got Taranto M8, I think moving them up to Neale for the 70 or 80k it's going to cost you is like going to be well worth it. It's going to be 20 points a week from here to the end of the year, something like that.
Yep. I am. A few weeks ago, I said I was panicking because I didn't have Bont. I am panicking because I don't have Neale, because I know he plays the Crows soon and he scores pretty heavy on them. And the Giants fixture, not the Giants, the Brisbane fixture after this week is looking pretty light on. So good for Zorko, good for Neale, good for Lions. What do you see him averaging? I was thinking he's going to be like a 110 for the year, coming off injury. After again, like it was against North, it could be like a 120. Do you see him averaging 120 for the rest of the year?
Yeah, 120 was exactly what I was going to say, and it's not so much because I think Neale's going to get back to his peak form, but it's just after this week, their schedule is so friendly. It's got to be one of the easiest. They're going to be aiming for that top 4 spot. Neale, I'm sure, wants to save some face coming off his Brownlow year as well, and he's still got that amazing help in lines in the midfield, which seems to actually boost his scoring more than hurt it. So, yeah, I think 120 from here on out is about where I would peg him.
Bring him in. So next player we can discuss is Patrick Dangerfield. So just the 90 odd on the weekend, but I believe he said post game that he's still about 2 weeks away from getting back to not necessarily his best, but getting back into it, like getting fully match fit. We know what Dangerfield, like, he's been a phenomenal scorer for a long time. He's a bit older now, but I think, remember he had that groin issue all pre-season, and now he's had more time to recover from that. Gets a few games under his belt. We saw what happened with Whitfield once he got a few games under his belt. Lockie Neale just needed 1 game, really.
Well, 1 game in the bye, and he had played some of the year. I guess like Danger had 2, but I mean, we saw Neale. It's basically this is his 3rd week. Whitfield took 3 or 4 to kind of get going. Oh no, it was even 3 for Whitfield, and Danger's now had 2, but he hasn't had the bye in the middle to rest. So I'd say like a week or 2 off sounds good, and like until he's at his best. So they play Brisbane this week. I think you can probably wait the week because he should lose more money with that 138 break even. But then next week they play my mob Essendon, and you would kind of pencil him in for a good score there. So I'm targeting to have him in next round.
Yep. So I think because I guess we've spoken about Dangerfield a fair bit the past few weeks, but where would you have him? So say your S tier is Hall and Zorko. Yep. So Hall's probably like 115, 120. Zorko maybe 110, given that his CBA's dropped when Neale came back from memory. Do you see Dangerfield in that same 110 plus bracket, or do you see him, tier below with like a Shea Bolton, for example?
I would have him above Shea, but yeah, I'd probably have him about Zorko. I don't think Zorko goes 110 from here. I reckon he's probably closer to 105. And that's probably about where I think a safe spot for Danger is. Because I do think they'll manage him. And obviously, he's still building that fitness base. I also think the other thing that we've seen from the Cats this year is they don't need him. With the amazing forward line they've got, with the midfield depth that's really come on, they don't need Danger to be a match winner. And that's obviously when a lot of his big scores have come from, when he's been match winning. He's not one of those players that scores from just going around the game and getting cheap possessions to score his big scores. He actually, tends to be that X factor, the game winning mid, contested, inside outside, goal scoring. And so I just have a feeling that they don't need him to put out his really big games. They just need him to build match fitness and be ready for the finals. And that's the thing that's going to limit his scoring more than his ability to put in a 130.
Yeah, I was just going to check his time on ground on the weekend. But yeah, I think you're right. I don't think they need him to be that guy anymore. So, nonetheless, I think he's probably on par with Zorko still. Then, if we have him around that 105 to 110 range sort of area. So,
His
I'm
time on
planning.
ground was 78, just by the way. And I guess the other thing to mention with him is he scored a 95, but he had three behinds. Like, he kept 0-3. So if any of those ended up being a goal, it was easily 100 plus for Danger this week. And that's with him still being 2 weeks away from match fit, according to him.
Yep. So, yeah, I wasn't really keen on Dangerfield, but I think coming to my senses now, I think he has to come in. So, and that's one of the reasons why I was kind of screwed for my trades this week, because it was like, I think I need to get Danger in after watching him Friday night. I was like, well, I don't really want to use my mid slot, but I don't want to use my forward slot either. So I was like, just get Josh Kelly, who's all I could afford, and then make room for Danger. So I've put a big priority on him now, and yeah, looking forward to getting him in 2 weeks. I think I think he has to be the number one target. He'll be probably 500, 490k. If you have the last slot and you have the money, I think there's no questions to be asked. You get Dangerfield in.
Yeah, I'd say there's 5 forwards that I'm confident that you want to have, and it's Hall, Zorko, Zeeble, Dusty, and Danger. And then, so those are the 5, and then your 6s, whichever cheap one you convinced yourself was going to be good, or like other one you convinced yourself was going to be good. I think, unfortunately, not many people are going to have those top 5. They'll probably just end up with 3 or 4 out of the 5 and have a few cheap ones. But yeah, those are the clear top 5 forwards for me at the moment, and everyone else has too much risk or uncertainty involved.
Yep, fair enough. Probably the last one, probably a Shea or Hind or Dale. I'm not really sure where to order these three. Dale I had first, but after this week, I'm like, oh god, he went forward for a bit.
To be fair, that was like injury related, right? Norton went down, and so they moved Dale forward in game. I'm hoping they actually replaced Norton with another forward, and Dale gets to go back behind the ball. Because yeah, that was really scary being a Dale owner seeing that happen.
Yep. But yeah, I think there's a lot of acceptable F6s. I mean, mine's going to be King Toby Green. It's probably also going to be a rookie for about 2 other games. But oh man, watching that man he should have been suspended 3 times. So I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? But yeah, there's lots of decent. But yeah, the 5 you named are definitely the ones you want. Now, Jarman Impey. This was a big headache last week because I saw Bryce Mitchell's projection. 4-round average of 70. If he went 70 again, it would have dropped 30k, and his break even would have been 130 again. So I panicked and hit the ejection button, and I should not have hit that because he scored 109. Do you still see? Because you still have MP, right?
Nope, I panicked as well, and also ejected him too, which definitely felt awful all weekend because I went for Langford, and so what did that cost me? Like 30, 40 points just straight off the bat, which is pretty annoying. I'm going to back in that trading him out is the right decision across the rest of the year. It's just one of those things where it was like a week off when we needed to do it.
Yeah. I guess it was hard because I think it's everything's easy in hindsight. But you got to remember his last month. You got to remember Will Day's come back in. You got to remember Clarko decided to mess with his role, and we know Clarko has done that with James Sicily, where there is no like Sicily was their best player and best defender, and he still moved him. And I feel like Impey's probably been in their top three players, and he still moved him. So that's kind of what was one of the main factors, as well as the break even, which made me want to get rid of him. But I think if you got rid of him, I think you'll be okay. But I think if you got him, I think you'll be okay. But you still don't see him as a keeper, right?
We're going to talk obviously some cheap options later on in the podcast to fill out your team, but I'd probably prefer Impey to all of those. You know, if Impey's your sixth and you had the other five we talked about, that's great. If you can get Impey to one of the other five we talked about, that'd also be good. But yeah, I definitely don't rate him as much as like a Dale or a Shea Bolton or a Hawkins or even I think like Green and Langford I'd still probably have above him. So I don't think it's a disaster to own him, but I think you're spot on. Like I don't think he's going to be good enough from here on out, and I think we're going to just see too much inconsistency where we're going to have some weeks where CJ goes off the chain, or Will Day, starts to build in form and get off it, or Clarko wants to move the magnets and try something different. Essendon put absolutely no time into Impey in that first half and just let him do whatever he wants as a loose in defence. And I think once that was addressed at half time, he didn't really score that much for the second half. I have a feeling that the 109 or whatever that he got this week is probably going to be his best score for the rest of the year. That would be my best guess.
I mean, hopefully for our sake, but I guess he's a reasonable, acceptable F6, I guess. Because when you think about it, as someone who doesn't have Bont is like an extra primo on top of a primo because he's like 30 points clear of most people's like M5 or M6 even. So the difference between like a Bont and like say a Mirror is probably, even a bigger difference than an Impey and a Shea Bolton, for example. So when you think of it that way, it's probably not as bad. So yeah. So I think if you're in that position, I think it's fine to keep. But if you can, you'd like to move him up to someone. But just depends on the position you're in. So Langford was pretty heavily traded in this week. Rutten did a master troll effort and didn't give him the CBAs. From what I saw, he was like the +1 at stoppages, a bit like how McLuggage was early in the season. Chera as well early in the season, where you start on the wing, but then if there's like another ball up, then you don't push out to the wing. You're pretty much at the stoppage, but just a little bit further away. Are you concerned that he lost his mid-time as well as Shield coming back? Because I don't think anyone expected him to lose mid-time. They just lost a player, so he was supposed to be their third best mid, and I didn't think that Stringer's body could hold up for that sort of mid-minutes. Are you concerned with Langford? It seemed like a bit of an almost game for Langford, but how do you feel about the Langford pick? Do you regret trading him in? Would you trade him in? And what do you think? Like, how do you feel about the pick right now?
Yeah, so it was a very frustrating game, and I think you're spot on. We saw him kind of be that fourth mid to the contest where he was the release handball and then be able to be that clearing kick. But he just had a bunch of moments in the early part of the game where he just kicking clangers, was getting handball to under pressure, or was missed as a target, or had the ball in hand and then a free was called against Essendon. So. It's just one of those games where if he was a little bit clean with disposable, a couple of things went his way and he would have tonned. And if he tonned, then you definitely wouldn't be feeling bad about his game whatsoever, even though Impey scored well. The other really positive sign, I guess, was he led the team for tackles with alongside Stringer. And he did get some CBAs. I think it was around 6 or 7. So there's still some promising signs. And I do think you're right that Stringer's body, we've seen kind of time and time again that it doesn't have the durability to hold up with that all year. He either picks up niggles or a soft tissue injury. But I'm definitely not as happy with Langford pick as I was a week ago. And if I could just trade him for free to Toby Green, I'd probably do that at the moment. But maybe that's just a little recency bias with the scores we saw on the weekend. So I'm still happy with Langford. I think the downside we saw was about an 80 average. and I think it's going to be closer than the 100 average we're hoping for. The other big concern is obviously when Shield returns, and does that push Langford down to like fifth in the rotation, which really could be quite bad. But yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't be trading him in. If you did bring him in, he's obviously just a hold. You can't be sidewaysing him again. But definitely a disappointing debut this week.
Yeah, I think because his CBAs were non-existent, but now he's been added, even if it's like it's 20, 30%, I think that floor raises slightly. So it goes from like high 70s to low 80s floor maybe, with upside, of course, if he gets more mid-time. So it was a bit random for the sudden drop-off when McGrath went out. It caught me completely off guard, but I think his floor is good enough that it's not going to hurt you too bad.
The one thing to keep in mind as well is the next two games at Essendon are Melbourne and Geelong. And so I would not be expecting great scores out of him out of the next 2 weeks. But then after that, the fixture opens up a little bit and things get a bit better. So I think any owners in the same boat, you kind of just have to stick fat for the next couple of weeks and wait for the Crows in round 17.
Yep. So the next player we wanted to, just briefly, we already discussed Dale, but two sort of injured players. So number one, sorry to bring up Josh Kelly. We do it every week to you, but Josh Kelly injury. So it sounds like, I mean, it's just notifying people that he's in doubt for this week with a rolled ankle. Played out throughout the game, bit of swelling. Might be okay. But yeah, I think this is just a hold, I guess.
Did you say the words in doubt? I just saw that he was a test.
Same thing.
Not really. I mean, as much as I would love Kelly to miss a week, don't get me wrong. He rolled the ankle. He worked through it. Finished the game out fine. Like I'd be really surprised if he didn't play this week. I'd be really surprised. The only way is if like they just want to be precautionary with him, and so they give him a week off. But it's only just been removed from a bye. I just can't see them doing that.
We'll see how it goes, I guess. I mean, it's not like Kelly didn't miss games or anything, so we'll see how it goes. And then this is mostly for my own sake, and those who stuck fat, my brothers that held Cam Guthrie. I watched tape of him because I couldn't watch the game, and multiple times I saw him go to ground, and he didn't like go on his instead of going to ground like sideways on his shoulder, he actually like slid into the ground with his knees rather than going to the ground. And I'm thinking, okay, he's still protecting that shoulder. So if I had a free trade, I would dip from Guthrie to Neale. It might not be the week because Neale has O'Connor this week, and O'Connor hasn't been in the greatest tagging form. He hasn't been running games out super well, but if I had a free trade, I would go Guthrie to Neale because I don't know how long. And it's only because it's Lockie Neale. Anyone else, I just hold. But Guthrie is clearly not 100%. So, look, it might be one of those things where, he just needs a little bit more time. Maybe he has a bit limited training. So just thought I'd add to that, Guthrie is not 100% at the moment. So I'm going to stick fat and might take a few weeks to get going. But very unfortunate because everyone else has a Lyons or Took or Parrish or Bont in that slot. So more pain, but hopefully he comes good eventually. So we can move on to budget picks. Now, I don't mind some of these budget picks. I'll go through the first one. So we have 2 from the midfield, 2 from the defenders, and 2 from the forwards. So the first one I'll speak about is Pendlebury. So Pendlebury had a pretty good last year. I think he went 110 or something. It was a shortened season, but he's had a few games where he's been injured and he's been moved around early. I think he's played some halfbacks, played some forward, but playing midfield right now, his break even, you could even use him as a stepping stone if you were somehow in that position, because his break even's so low. He dropped to 160 this week, but I think at that 420 price range, I think he's the one. The other one is Adam Chera, who I don't know why has dropped off the face of the earth on last year's form. So I'm a fan of the Pendlebury pick for 420k. Obviously, it's not a position you want to be in. And yeah, just to preface, these players, I probably wouldn't pick any of them unless I was in the position where I needed a budget pick. But Pendlebury, I think for 420k, I like the pick. He's just proven and seems to be fit at the moment and only has to get through a few more games.
Yeah, so I don't like the Pendlebury pick, and I don't like it because he seems to score well when he's in the midfield, but then when he's not in the midfield, doesn't score that well. What's going to happen with Harvey this week? We don't really know. Is Harvey going to play for the future and Blood Youth? Is he going to try and go for wins now and put Pendles in his best position? But the fact that Pendles has had to be moved around so much because of injuries does worry me from here throughout the rest of the year. Is he going to play mid 24/7? So instead, I offer up to you the prodigy, the golden child of the AFL, Matthew Rowell. Look, if you look at his Supercoach score on the weekend, a 70, very disappointing. I get that. He's now at 425k with, I think, a break even in the 120s, 130s. So you can definitely wait a week and get another look at him. But the stuff that I liked about his game on the weekend was he had 13 contested possessions, which was tied for second most amongst Gold Coast, sitting behind Took Miller. He only had 2 clangers despite having 13 contested possessions, which is incredibly difficult to do. So actually quite efficient. He was starting to tackle again as well. He's still lacking that match fitness, which I think is what really was holding him back, as well as Gold Coast kind of just being pretty arse in general. But yeah, I think he's probably a week or two away from actually finding some decent form and being the cheap M8 option of the year for mine.
Okay, interesting. He did play a bit of half forward last week. That'd be pretty cool if we got him as a forward for next year.
Oh, that would be amazing. Oh, he'd be first picked. He's one of those ones where even if he's a midfielder next year, you want to pick him just because you want to cheer for him. It's a bit like Bont. You don't want to have to sit there and be unhappy with Bont getting the ball each week. You want to enjoy those games. And I mean, I guess the easy thing with Gold Coast is you don't have to watch any of the games anyway. But I want to be able to cheer for Matt Rowell next year. I felt bad round one. And being like relieved that he wasn't going to kill us after that PCL. It's such a dirty feeling.
Showing signs of coming good, Rao, which is a good sign. I still think I take Pendlebury though, just because I think I know what I'm going to get roughly from Pendlebury, probably somewhere in the 90s with upside. And then I think if they move him, it might be halfback, but both have their risks. So I'm still taking Pendlebury though, but I can see the argument for both. We can move on to defenders. So the first one I'll speak about, we've spoken about him for a few weeks now, is Nick Haynes has his intercepting and rebounding rollback. He's 360k. He was a good pick for us last year, except for the last 2 rounds when he kind of threw in the towel and scored 240s. But other than that, he was like around 100 average. So from what I've seen, he's intercepting, he's chipping it around, he's rebounding, he's doing all those things, and he looks quite good, Nick Haynes. So he's over those injuries that he had. 360k. I think he's a fine D6. It's just he looks exactly the same as he did for most of last year. So for me, I would expect anywhere between 85 and low 90s from him for the rest of the year. And for that price, I think he's the one at that price that I would go for. Who would be? Do you like the Haynes pick? And is there anyone else that you like that's a budget pick in defense?
I think Haynes is a great pick at 366k. He would be the cheapest of any of the options I think we're going to talk about. That's realistically a good one. I think he's had a 118 and a 96 in the last 2, so averaging over 100. The part that worries me most about Haynes is not only the drop-off you mentioned at the end of last year, but we are reliant on Phil Davis staying fit, so it frees up Haynes to play that more rebounding role, which scares me a little bit, but based on, I guess, some of the form we saw last year and how we looked on the weekend, definitely a big fan of that pick. The other one, which is a little bit cheating because he's almost 100k more expensive, would be Dan Houston. So a 98 and a 102 in the last 2 games, averaging 100 since the bye. 3-round average of 99, and I think his average for the year is about 91. So he's cheap because he had that AC joint injury, which has plagued him through a lot of the middle of the year. He does seem to be over it a little bit, and while his roll risk is real and it does affect his scoring, I think we're going to see enough that at his price of 440k, he'd be a great pickup if you are looking for a D6.
Houston does stress me out because I saw him go off to get his hamstring assessed on the weekend, and I did not like that. That makes me run from the pick, I think. So
Oh well, I mean, as we said, I don't want any of these picks, but if you're looking for a cheap one, then Houston or Haynes would be definitely the two I'd be looking at down back.
yeah,
But
or even
you're firmly Haynes. You'd much rather have Haynes.
I think if there was the same price, Haynes. No, if there was the same price, sorry, probably Houston. But I think, yeah, Houston's got the upside. There's also a few others in that price range, such as James Harms is 450. I think Short and Ridley's 450 as well. So I think they're reasonable options as well at that price. But
I'm glad you brought him up because you and Enno were slinging some mean words against Ridley last week, all high and mighty after a short 111, and Ridley answered back with a 111. Tell me, what did you think of his game?
I didn't watch.
Oh, you missed a masterclass. Oh, no wonder you're so upset after the weekend. Ridley could have put a smile on your dial. I must say, George, he looked a bit like the Ridley we saw from the first few weeks. Not 100% back yet, but I just wonder if he has been carrying an injury. We've seen that taped knee, and it is still taped, but it's interesting that after the bye, he's looked a little bit fresher, a little bit more willing to kick long. They've been giving him some kickouts again. So I just wonder if they were managing his load. It could just be a one-off special, and he starts to drift away again. But yeah, some interesting signs from Ridley on the weekend.
I think you could be right because that strapping came out of nowhere, and he was a bit proppy at training one week. Just my observations, but that would make sense because it was a bit of a form drop off, and his role did change. But he's one of the most efficient kicks we've ever seen. Like, why would they take his kickouts away for like a Redmond or something? But
And it's not to say that Redmond's poor or anything like that, but Redmond's that booming long kick, while Ridley is a little bit more accurate and precise. And so I guess like you do want to use different kicks for different situations, but it feels weird to me that Ridley wasn't taking most of them.
Yep. So yeah, I guess a bit more at ease with that pick. I do remember last year he was like going 110 one week, then 80 the next week in the last few rounds. But yeah, I think looks I guess from what you're saying, looks good at the moment. So, but yeah, for 450, I think I'd take Ridley over Houston for 450. Now that I just realised that he's at that price, but yeah, I think there's a few. At least I think we have options if you need a budget defender. So now the forward line, and we've mentioned this guy for a month straight. I don't know why, because we've never even dreamt of picking him. But Harry Mackay, I've been saying, I think he was like a top 6 forward before he hurt his shoulder. So he's 330k, I believe, 340, something like that. He plays the Crows this week, and the Crows, we don't like playing defenders or key defenders for some reason. We prefer to use third tolls as key defenders, and every week key forwards go bananas on us. It happens every single week. So I think he's a decent price at 340, I think it was. I think it's actually 330. So
328.
I think he looks good on the week. I think he kicked 3 goals too. So for that price, I'd love to sideways a rookie and use him as F7 if I could do that. I can't do it though. And then you can like loophole him, and then if he has a big game, you take the score sort of thing. But look, I think I'm a big fan of his just re-signing with Carlton. Not that that means anything, but I think he's been a phenomenal forward this year, and for 320k, there's definitely value there.
And if you want to hear his next 5 on the fixture, you've got Adelaide, Freo, Geelong, Collingwood, and North. So looking at probably 4 wins there. The Geelong matchup, probably not great, although they have been giving it points forwards. And the Collingwood ones, I guess a little bit wary just because they are very defensive at the moment, but that game style could free up. So look, I think his break-even's 100 this week as well. So he's pretty much at the bottom if you're looking to bring him in. Maybe you could wait a week, but yeah, a great cheap F6 option for sure.
Any other options you're looking at in the forward line?
There's one that have been asked a lot about this week, and I'm sure you probably have too. And this is recency bias at its finest. It is, of course, Jake Stringer, who popped out a 180 on the weekend and was the difference between Essendon and Hawthorn and getting the win. He was someone that people were looking at earlier in the year because he was starting to get the CBA, starting to get that mid-time. And when the questions popped up then, because he was already cheap, the answer was simply no. You can't go Jake Stringer. And it's not because of the talent, it's not because the scoring potential isn't there, it's just because he has never been able to put it together for a long enough point in time throughout a year. He's just always injured. He's always got a niggle, a problem that prevents him from being like a Essendon's version of a Dustin Martin, which is a terrible comparison, but hopefully gives you like an illustrative idea of, you know, a centre bounce mid that can then push forward and score goals. Obviously goes about it a very different way, but like he just doesn't have the fitness. He doesn't have the durability to get there. So people are going to look at him, and his price is not even that cheap. He's 375k. He went up something like 60k this week alone on the back of that 180. So he's an avoid for mine. I would much rather have Mackay. Do you agree with that assessment, or does Jake Stringer interest you?
I couldn't stomach owning Jake Stringer. I think he's just as likely to score 150 as he is 20. I think he did that. I think he scored didn't he have two sub 30 games early in the year? One of them was not even injury affected.
27 in round 5 and a 22 in round 8.
Yeah, I can't do that. So, look, he looked great. It was from the limited of what I saw of him, he looked great. So, but it's a no. As you said, you can't trust him. But yeah, he's just the worst version of. I guess you can't even compare him to Dusty. Doesn't even have as good tattoos as Dusty either. So he's a no. But from the sounds of it, he played a phenomenal game. So
one of the best individual games of the year. But I mean, he's not repeating that for weeks and weeks this year. You just can't do it.
No. So. Someone just quickly, I want to give a quick mention to is Rowan Marshall was a test this week. I think his break-even's going to be high for the next 2 weeks, and he might reach mid 400s in a few weeks, in 2 weeks. So he's one where you could look at if he plays this week, see how he goes. Assuming the surgery, which he was supposed to have in the preseason, but he chose not to. And then St. Kilda were like, oh, whoops, well, we just blew half his season. And yeah, so if he's feeling good and says he's his shoulder, it's not his shoulder, it's his foot. His foot is better from the surgery, plays okay the next 2 weeks, and at a good price. Rowan Marshall is one you could look at as your F6. So just a quick tip there.
Especially if you have that ruck forward option open, and then you can kind of get some DPP going. That'd be really nice. I think there might actually be one other left. No, actually, no. Sorry, there's not. I was thinking. Look, don't pop me for this. I was thinking Jesse Hogan might be back this week at 310k. He's shown some good scores this year, but he's still 2 to 3 weeks away on the calf. So yeah, he's going to miss the window for when we want that cheap F6 to finish the team.
I think I'd go Jesse Hogan if maybe there was 3 rounds to go. That's about my limit for trusting him, unfortunately.
He's looked amazing when he's played in the GWS side, but yeah, his injury proneness is just something shocking. One other one, actually, just to test you, George, is Connor Rosie. So he's had a couple of good games now, a 94 this week, a 126 the week before. You know, kind of rumoured to be getting more mid-time, but that was obviously derailed by foot issues, which saw him start really slow to the year. Has come good after the buys. At 361k, would you consider him over Harry Mackay or Jake Stringer?
No. Over Jake Stringer, yes. You know, he was going so poorly that I have him in draft. I put him on my draft bench and played Mitch Georgiadis over him. And then I realized I've left 90 average the last 3 weeks on the bench. So, again, with Rosie, it's he looks, when he's on, man, is he good. But was it because of injury? Was it because of form? You know, they were talking about dropping him a few weeks ago, but he's in form. Port's fixture's not super hard, but I think I like Mackay a little bit better. I just don't trust Rosie. I need to see consistent form. He was far better in his first year than he was last year or even this year, maybe apart from the last month or so. But man, Rosie seriously burnt those as hard as you could possibly be burnt last year, and it's the start of this year as well. But it's probably is he fully over that foot issue? It might look like it, but we're not sure. For that reason,
It's a pretty common theme with like these 300, 400k cheaper forward options. They're all these X Factor type players. So it's like Stringer, Jagoe, Hogan, Higgins, Rewalt, Rosie, Elliott, and like Mackay, like key forwards and X Factor type players. So if you're desperate to find one of these, my advice would be try and find one that hasn't had the worst injury history, has a really good schedule, and you're going to back them into actually have a few match wins from here to the end of the year. I just think it's really hard to do, and it's probably not the area you want to be cheaping out. But it sounds like we would both pick Mackay if forced to pick a cheap F6 from some of the ones we've talked about.
Yep. We can move on to rookies, and I guess with rookies now, it's like you don't need them. The ones you're bringing in, you don't need their money. Most likely, you just need them as cover for the most part. So the first one, Luke Edwards in the midfield, looked great a few weeks ago. Really, really clean, really good disposal with the ball. I like him. I would bring him in. I have no use for him. I have a full mid-bench. So I will pass on Edwards, but he's one where if I was in that position, he's definitely the rookie to grab. 117k. Nothing much to say on him, but one thing to note is the Eagles have quite a few mids coming back, so it'd be pretty unfair for him to be dropped, but someone has to go out, unfortunately. So that's one to keep an eye on. Are you bringing Edwards in this week?
Potentially. I'm in the spot as well where like I've got Bramble, I've got Newcomb. I probably do want to have a loophole and a guaranteed donut. But Edwards looks like he's going to score better than the other two rookies. So it's one I have to weigh up. Do I want the 15k? Do I want a slightly better mid cover? I'm not really sure yet.
Yep. So Kieran Briggs, Mumford, it sounds like he's available this week. Can they play all three? Because you can't drop Flynn, right? Unless he needs a spell. So I'm not sure they can play all three unless they play Briggs key defense, but there's not really a spot for him right now. So I think Briggs, I assume he loses his spot for Mumford because that's the only reason why he's in. So I don't think you can bring him in, really. I guess if you brought him in, you probably have Madden as well, so you can swing him back and forth. Madden probably plays throughout the year because they need speed and defense, but I don't think you can really. I don't think it's wise to bring in Briggs, even if they play three rucks, because I don't think that'll be the case. But it just seems that he's a placeholder for Mumford, so it's pretty much a donut. Yeah, I think he's one where you just had to grab him last week. If not, then probably don't need him, unless there's an injury. Bramble played okay. Morrison, there's no timeline on Morrison in his hamstring injury, so his job security might be linked to Morrison, who was playing a bit of the wing role. For 102k, I think it's fine to bring in if you need someone. I definitely prefer Edwards if he's named with all the West Coast mids coming back. You're looking at Bramble at all? Did you grab him this week?
I did bring him in this week, so I was pretty happy with his 50, 60 points, whatever it was. I was bringing him in just to play this week, and then I kind of didn't care if he got games from here on out or not. I wouldn't be bringing him as playing cover because it's a bit unsure to me how they keep playing like both Bramble and Newcomb, and it sounded like from the press we heard on the weekend that Newcomb was definitely getting another game, so I'm not sure how they rated Bramble, but he looked decent to me. But I wouldn't be surprised if these two were in and out throughout the rest of the year. They got a few games, had a break, got a few games, had a break. But I mean, like, definitely not one I'd be clambering to go and get, but I guess the cheap price tag helps a lot.
Yep. Now, there's one player we might get this week, and he could be our forward and mid cover. He's DPP. He kicked 6 of the 7 goals Port Adelaide's SNFL team kicked last week. Houston gave him a shout out in a tweet, if that means anything. But I think it's Dylan Williams from Port. Was a reasonably high pick a few years ago, I think. Looks like he's there because they were using Lockie Jones forward, I believe, from memory. And Robbie Gray, who was playing a lot of mid-time, but it's Robbie Gray plays forward as well. So that might open the door for Williams to play and hold his spot because Gray's out for 8 weeks, so he's not back to round 22. This could be our mid-forward cover if you can swing him with maybe you have Finn McRae that's dead, for example. So this guy's one to watch out for this week. I mean, there's nothing much more to say, but maybe he gets named. It seems like there's a chance. 6 goals in the VFL plus in the SNFL plus 2 injuries in the forward line doesn't get much big opportunity than that. Maybe Boyd Woodcock comes in, not sure, but yeah, he's one where you probably don't go early on, but he could be the one you downgrade in a few weeks that to finish your team as cover. So just thought I'd touch on that.
Yeah, actually, just one other thing on Dill Williams. So pick 23 in the 2019 draft, which, as you mentioned, high pick. He's like a medium-sized forward, I think about 185, 6 centimeters, with like known for like X factor in front of goals, which definitely on display on the weekend. The most interesting thing about him is between injury and COVID in 2020, he wasn't able to actually play any games in the Rezzies. But despite this, just based on his training, intra-club form, Port Adelaide still extended him for 2 seasons to the end of 2023. So that's like a pretty interesting thing for me that he hadn't played any footy since being drafted, but they still extended him for 2 years. And if you look at how that draft's turning out from 2019, there's a lot of good players. Like Harrison Jones at Essendon was at 30, who's another tall forward. But above him, you've got players like Dev Robertson at 22. You had Georgiades, Waitman. So a lot of like good forwards in this draft, and he's right smack bang in the middle of them. So if you buy into that being a pretty good draft, then some positive signs if he gets a call up this weekend.
That is fantastic info. So that gives us a bit more confidence, I think. So fingers crossed he gets named because the opportunity is there. Other than that, I think we're probably looking at donuts or other random rookies that might get named. So there's the North rookie, Jacob Edwards. He is the Combin replacement, I guess, in terms of Supercoach wise. So he's 102 forward ruck. Sounds like he's a development player, unlikely to play a game, but went first in the mid-season draft. So he's perfect swing with CCJ if you're keeping him.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've put together, I guess, a few 102K options if you're looking for those downgrades that have that DPP. And I guess like two things to think about here is, do you want them to potentially play a game or not? Because it might lead you to pick some over the others. And the other is like try and pick these 102K players for bad teams. Because with these floating fixtures, my gut feel is that the bad teams, especially like non-Big Four, non-marquee clubs, they're going to end up with the Sunday games that'll let you do the loopholing. So, players from clubs like Gold Coast are always great for loopholes because they seem to play a disproportionate amount of Sunday games. Same with Freo, they tend to get shafted a little bit. And I'm guessing North's going to be in that same boat. So a 102K ruck forward in Edwards that can loop with CCJ is great. Another DPP option is Durham for Essendon, who also got picked up in the mid-season draft, 102K defender forward. He was actually an emergency for us on the weekend, and given how some of the players like Carl performed, there's actually a chance that he gets a game. So if you're looking for a defender mid loophole that won't get a game, you could look at Aiden Fife from the Gold Coast Suns. Nothing wrong with having another Fife in your team. And for a mid forward 102K loophole, his name I can't pronounce, but his surname's I think OEA. I'm not sure. That's a difficult name for me to pronounce. So those are 4 kind of loopholes you could look at if you are looking for non-playing rookies to help finish your side.
Yep. And then one thing, note 5, you might be able to swing with Bianco and cover him in both lines if he plays. So that's kind of nice. I think Durham, he might be a chance to get a game soon, but I'm not sure. So captains this week. I have barely nailed a I think my average captain score over the past month has been about 100. So I am not doing great.
George. You're hurting.
Down bad. So I need to get it right this week. So looking at the fixture, Lockie Neale might have O'Connor. I don't know if you want to vice captain him, but he is Lockie Neale. So I'm looking at Jack Steele against Richmond. I think I'll go Jack Steele vice captain. He's in pretty hot form at the moment, and Richmond's midfield isn't super great until like finals anyway. So I think I'm looking at Jack Steele. And then just news came in. Grundy's been cleared to play. Just checked Twitter just then, so that's great.
Yes, that is such good news.
So Grundy,
excellent.
Grundy plays Sean Darcy, who's been pretty good this year. Probably the 3rd ruck for the year after Gawn and Grundy. Fourth behind Nick Nat. Yeah. So you could go Grundy. Could go Grundy vice captain, and then Gawn play straight after against Draper. Probably get injured at half time. And then play Peter Wright in the ruck for a bit. So, what are you looking? I think I'm looking at Steele into. I don't know. Help me out here. What you got?
Okay, so I've got a left field option. Um, well, firstly, let's get it out of the way. I think the best team to VC or C someone against at the moment is North. So looking at their last 4 games, they had last week Neale went 156, Lions 141. The week before they had Josh Kelly go 147. Round 11 before their bye they had Steele 154 and Crouch 126. And in round 10 against Essendon, Parrish 152, McGrath 123, Merritt 117. So in 3 of the last 4 games they've given up a 150 and in the last one they gave up a 147. So mids against North seem to be absolutely killing it at the moment. If you have Took Miller, then I would say that is a very good vice captain option. But in the same game, my left field option is going to be Aaron Hall. And the reason why, I mean, we've seen his ceiling, despite not the best game on the weekend, still has yet to fail to ton since being put in that halfback role. But Gold Coast have actually been giving up points to halfback. So Alir dropped to 122. Bergman did a 115 against them. You had Luke Ryan in round 13 get a 128. James Asian, same game, got a 111. Against Hawthorn in round 11, you had... I actually think that was the one game they didn't give up a big score, and that's because they thumped Hawks. And then there's one other one. Oh, sorry, I'm getting the games mixed up. I think that's the Swans game. Sorry, where is the last one? Oh no, George, it's all falling apart, mate.
I will save. Okay, so Aaron Hall down at Tassie. Yeah, I'm down. I don't like Hall as captain, but I like him as vice captain.
Yeah, a vice
He was
captain,
on
I don't mind.
Yeah, so he seems to have big halves the last few weeks. Like he started really slow, and then him and Zeeble, handshake each other and say, let's do this, let's stat pad for a bit. But I think he's probably a bit better than Zeeble, but yeah.
Oliver or Gorn against Essendon, any thoughts or considerations there?
Gorn, I don't feel good about captaining for some reason. It's just been like they might give more time to Jackson, and they might be stuck forward for a bit. But look, he's Max Gorn. He'll take those contested marks, those intercept marks, especially late in games. Has a really good habit of doing that. So I think it's okay. But it's coming off a break as well. Probably feeling we'll wake up feeling pretty dangerous after a break. So I think Gorn over Oliver, just because Oliver's last few haven't been too crash shot since that 200. So, so many reasonable options, but no standout options. So it's really hard.
Josh Kelly against the Hawks is a no way.
No, not with this dodgy ankle.
One other one we've been looking at is the Dogs against West Coast. So West Coast is getting some of their better midfielders back this week, but we saw Yo kind of come in underdone the other week. Would you consider putting the captaincy on McRae or Bont this week against the West Coast at Optus Stadium?
Yeah, I think that's fine. McRae's scored like 130 or something on Optus a few weeks ago, so it should be fine. And then Bont is Bont. Bont will never get tagged, and he will never score below 130 for the rest of the year. Maybe like 125, but yeah, hop on the Bont Brownlow bandwagon. Yeah, I think they're reasonable options. And then Walsh against the Crows. Walsh hasn't been super crash hot lately, but the Crows leak, and Walsh probably due for a big one. So yeah, it's really hard. I think Hole into Gorn, maybe Steele into Gorn. So yeah, I'm not sure. I think the Dogs are fine. I think the original plan was Steele into McRae.
Yep.
Old reliable the last few weeks. So Steele's been good the past few weeks. But yeah, probably at this stage still into McRae. But it's one where there's a ton of options and no real standouts. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, I think Took Miller owners probably got the easiest VC this week. But then, yeah, if that fails, I think they're going to be struggling with the rest of us to find what that great captain is. One that you didn't touch on is actually one of your own, George, in Laird against Carlton. Would you entertain him at all? 132 and 144 in his last 2 games.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I like Laird. I think he's super consistent. His last 2 months have been quite phenomenal. So it's hard to... I feel like Laird is a VC, though. because he can have those games where his disposal hurts him. So
Yeah, that's fair.
I think it'll be still or Hole into McRae. Or gone. It'll be one of those. It'll be one of those four. Just however I feel the day before.
Yeah, I don't hate Oliver as an option either. I know his last couple of weeks haven't been the best, but I think you could see him bounce back. He'll probably go head to head with Parrish, who was drafted one spot behind him. That should be a pretty interesting matchup.
Fun to watch.
Yeah, it's actually pretty tricky because I do really want to vice captain Hall this week, but it feels like the smart option is just to take Steele and Neale. And I once again, Hall's not one of those ones you want to put the captain on. You want to put a vice captain on because you just like the injury risk. Still figuring out how McDonald affects the side. So yeah, it's a really tough one.
McDonald playing wing now, I think.
Yeah, well, he's the one that I was thinking. Because they have been leaking points to midfielders, I do wonder if McDonald gets his form back. Maybe they do actually give him an accountable role in some of the games rather than just having Turner do it. Just because I think they'd offer slightly different in terms of the defensive capabilities. But it's just thought bubble.
He's going to tag Bont in a few weeks again. I reckon I'm like 90% sure because in the preseason, we're getting off topic here, but McDonald, he said that he liked, he said like McDonald, this is a coach, Noble was saying McDonald can be used in a number of roles. So I would not be surprised if he tags Bont in a few weeks, but we'll see.
All right, well, we're just about to wrap up, I think, George, but a final reminder, everyone, to make sure you set your teams properly this week. So your emergencies are actually useful again. Make sure you've got them all set up properly. Make sure you know who your loopholes are. So if you are going to get the captain loophole going, you've got the ordering right on your bench. Just some good hygiene this week. Make sure your VC and C are set, properly before the round, because I've heard a few horror stories during the bye with people just getting really sloppy with these things, and I feel like this week could catch some people out doing some dumb things.
Yep. I think we had someone in Discord with Hammy captain Stuart by accident.
Stuart scored a 128 or 130.
Something
what was
like
it?
That, yeah. So you take those, from one of those buy rounds. But yeah, it can happen quite easily, especially if you're disorganized with your last minute trades and reversing stuff. But I think that's all from us. I think probably from here on out, the podcast will probably be a bit shorter. Today will probably be the last long one, just because there's less stuff to talk about. But good luck to everyone for the rest of the year. Hopefully your final team holds up for the rest of the year, and just back yourself in, and hopefully you get a good rank. But all the best to everyone. Thank you, JD, for joining us.
Thanks, George.
As well. Shout out to Enno. Looking forward to having him back next week. But yeah, hopefully he recovers well from tonsillitis. But see how we go. So thanks, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Peace.